debate on vote number 14, Basic Education Appropriation Bill.
I now invite the Honourable the Minister of Basic Education to introduce a budget vote. Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, honourable members of Parliament, colleagues from provinces, MECs that we've invited them here, and top principals of leading schools. This is the best of the best. So thank you very much for coming here. So, Chair, thank you for the 2018, Chair, thank you for the 2018-2019 debate on vote 14 on basic education, which is delivered and debated on the year in which we are making the centenary. President Mandela was an embodiment of humility, and he did not only teach us about the virtues of selflessness, but he exhibited such virtues in his everyday life. He demonstrated through words and deeds what it means to be a selfless, true leader of the people. This year, we also mark the centenary celebration of another giant of our struggle, Umamunontsiglelo Albertina Sisulu, and through her remarkable life and outstanding leadership, she in August State of the Nation address, we honor President Mandela and Mama Sisulu in a year of change, a year of renewal, and a year of hope. And through the centenary celebrations of their lives, we're not merely honoring the past, but we're building the future, yes, and a new dawn for South Africa. Chair and honorable members, during the 2017-2018 budget vote, I did remind this House that in 2015, UNESCO adopted the Global Education Agenda, which is called Education 2030, which is part of the 17 UNESCO Sustainable Development Goals that make up the agenda for sustainable development. In particular, it calls for inclusive anything. South Africans should have access to education and training of the highest quality, leading to significantly improved learning, inclusivity and quality of educational opportunities widely available to all. As we approach the end of the 5th administration of our democratic government, in reflecting the work we have done so far, guided by our vision, the following quintessential observations remain pertinent in the trajectory in our journey as a sector. So we can report that we have successfully created that single integrated basic education which the ruling party had committed itself in its Ready to Govern document, which is based on the values and principles enshrined in our constitution, as well as regional, continental, and international protocols. We have accelerated the implementation of the principle of social justice, namely access, redress, equity, inclusivity, and have made great progress in efficiency and quality. And we can proudly say we have brought about stability in the curriculum implementation, which has led to sustained improvement in the teaching and learning outcomes. And we have strengthened the national curriculum statement through the introduction of CAPS, which is viewed as also a good curriculum. We have repositioned and strengthened the alignment of basic education sector in preparation for providing young people with skills, competencies, and knowledge for the changing world. This we continue to do through the implementation of three-stream curriculum model, the 4th Industrial Revolution, entrepreneurship, and the UNESCO International Bureau of Education framework for fitting regularly with our internal structures and created new ones, such as quarterly meetings with our district directors, informed by specific themes driving quality of education, and annual meetings with provinces, as well as monitoring and party with credibility and integrity. So we are the first to acknowledge that while we have made such great progress in our for quality teaching and learning to take place, especially in the early grades, I do want to encourage this with the public. So let me go to the education sector, like most other service delivery areas, has had to reduce what it purchases. This has occurred while enrollments in our schools have increased substantially, largely due to demographic factors. I'd like to assure this House that we are monitoring the situation very carefully, and we are engaging with National Treasury on this matter. We are doing to address the budget and spending situation, even though DBE is also experiencing budget pressures. the basic education sector 2018-2019 total budget represents 1% cut over the previous financial year total allocation. In inflation-adjusted terms, this means that we are seeing a decline in the overall budget allocation for the basic education sector. I was heartened by the measures put forward by His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa in his inaugural State of the Nation address to put the country back on track as far as economic growth is concerned. This will ease the pressure on the education sector and create a better environment for educational improvement, which, as we should all know, is a prerequisite for a healthy economy and society and for our ongoing task of tackling the legacy of deep inequalities in South Africa. Chair and honorable members, allow me to highlight the following in relation to the budget to Budget 14, Basic Education for 2018 MTF period. The overall 2018-2019 MTF budget allocation for the Department of Basic Education is just under 23 billion, which is as a result of the austerity measures and was decreased by 3% from 2017 to 2018 allocation. The breakdown on the budget on allocations as follows. The amount allocated to administration this year has increased with 8.2 from last year's allocation to about 450 million. For curriculum policy support and monitoring, we received less than 2 billion, which is the same allocation that we received in 2017-2018. So despite increases in other areas of expenditure, again here we're seeing a decline because the lack of increase, it means it's a decline on our part. The allocation of teacher education, human resources, and institutional development increased by 5.7% to 1.3 billion. Planning, information, and assessment is allocated 12 billion, which is an increase of 9.1 from the 2017 allocation. And the allocation for educational enrichment services increased by 5.9 from last year's allocation to 7 billion. On conditional grants over the 2018 MTF period, the overall allocation for conditional grants is 17.5 billion, an increase of 2.1 from the total of 2018, and the specific allocations are as follows. For math, science, and technology, the grant is allocated 370.5 million, which is an increase of 1.5%. On infrastructure, which continues to be funded through what we call the Education Infrastructure Grant and the Accelerated School Infrastructure Delivery, also known as ASIDI, is funded at 9.9 billion and 1.5 billion respectively, which means from the EIG grant, we see a decline or a decrease of 1.3 billion, and from ASIDI, a whopping 43.5% decrease. So the HIV and AIDS, whose purpose is to support South Africa's HIV and TB prevention strategy, has been allocated 243.2 million, which is a decrease of a percentage from last year's allocation. The National School Nutrition Program has been allocated 6.8 billion, which is an increase of 5.8 billion. And I'm quite excited, Chair, to say 5 million, which is 3 times what we received last year of 72 million. Speaker or Chair, I wish to thank the National Treasurer for allocating also 29.2 million as a general budget to support the allocation for Rural Education Assistance Project, which we call REAP. This amount will increase to a total of 58.3 million in the outer year, 2 years of 2018. We're in the process, we have started identifying unemployed young matriculants to be appointed as education assistants in curricular and co-curricular activities in 6 rural districts from the Eastern Cape, KZN, and Limpopo. The allocation for Funza Lusaka bursary has been increased by 5.5% from last year's allocation of 1.2 billion. In 2018-2019, the subsidy to Umalusi 5.6% from last year's contribution of 135.7 million. And the National Senior Certificate Learner Retention Program, also known as the Second Chance Program, which we introduced in 2016 to respond to the NDP injunction that the retention rates should be improved and dropout which is an increase of 46%. And the NECT has been allocated 117.2 million, which is an increase of 5.6%. On workbooks and the early grade learning program has been allocated 28 million, up from 11 million. And for ICTs, the Operation Pakistan Education, which received 16 million in 2017, has been allocated 36 million. So, Chair, let me end on the details of the budget by stating that in line with the UNESCO Sustainable Development Goals, we are paying more attention than ever to the equality of service delivery. There are still vast inequalities, but we should not ignore the gains we have made. A 2007 UNESCO report, namely the Educational Quality, Equity and Public Policy, comparing results from the 16 countries, is an example to the world when it comes to ensuring that public spending is equitably distributed and that we do not ignore our rural areas and poor communities. And credit must go to the ANC-led government for achieving this. We need to make sure that in the current economic and fiscal climate, we continue to prioritize those programs that need the funding. So I can see focus areas is the review of our progression and promotion policies, especially in the lower grades. A number of education experts have opined on this matter, and the overwhelming message is that it does not make any educational sense to make young people, children. Repetition is a powerful early signal of failure, a signal that lasts through the individual's life. So to improve the efficiency of the system, we're also focusing on grades 9 to 11, as repetition and dropout rates are also high in these grades. Our second focus area is early childhood development. One of the NDP directives stated that there should be a policy and program shift to ensure that DBE take the core responsibility for the provision of ECD. As I can report that we have already initiated a process to ensure that the transitional arrangements between the two sister departments are smooth and seamless as directed by the ruling party, the ANC. To ensure quality and efficiency on ECD delivery, we must address the inhibitors identified in the NDP, such as dealing with institutional arrangements and the legal lacuna on the effective and efficient delivery of the ECD. The third focus area is the reality that we have repeatedly stated that the internal efficiency in the system and quality basic education outcomes can be achieved through specific and deliberate interventions in the early grade, and we're doing lots of work in that area. And our fourth focus is in strengthening the curriculum content, quality and relevance in subject offerings such as history, math, science, and technology. Again, Chair, through the Portfolio Committee would like to give more information and share information on the work that we're doing in this area. And the fifth focus area is also a response to the reality that the world is changing rapidly, what is now referred as the fourth industrial revolution. We have been part of the global fora, such as are encapsulated in our CAPS curriculum, and we have been advised to focus on the training of teachers to reflect on these skills and competencies in teaching and learning. And the sixth focus area, again, is improving coordination and coherence in the sector. And the seventh one is focusing on the infrastructure planning, coordination, and delivery. Chair, I have to say with embarrassment and sadness that efficiencies found in this area, exacerbated by the inability of the sector to attract, build industry specialists required, and the challenge related to financial disbursements are getting a special focus. We're in constant engagement with National Treasury, the Department of Public Works, and our strategic partners in this area. They've had to face two fatalities related to grade R children drowning in pit latrines is very lamentable and very embarrassing, and could have been prevented. We're mobilizing all available resources, including the participation of the private sector and the build industry. Last but not least, Chair, we're also looking at social transformation, progressive policy of the ANC, the ruling party. We believe that we have laid a solid foundation in achieving the implement, appreciate the engagements that we enter with them. I really also want to say, as a sector, we've agreed that one of the key sectors, key responsibilities, holistic development of our children, and we will be launching an MOU with the Department of Sports on on educational sport. I've run out of
Honourable
time.
Minister, your time
I've
is
run
now
out of
expired.
time.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honourable Gina.
Honorable Chairperson, House Chair, Minister of Basic Education and Deputy Minister, Deputy Minister. Today, we are debating the 2018-19 budget vote number 14 of 22.7 billion. It's a lot of money indeed, and it carries a lot of hope to millions of our learners and teachers. Our budgets over the years have improved access to education and learners. We debate and approve the budget because we know that this budget continues to provide inclusive, equitable, quality, efficient education and accountability in the system. We debate today convinced that the department is equal to the task to deal with the remaining challenges that are there in the system. As we approve this debate, noting that the budget decreased from 23.4 billion in 2017-18 from the financial year 28 to 22.7 billion, we are reassured, as President Mandela said, a great engine of personal development. It is a budget that injects hope that the lives of our children will be transformed. As Mandela once said, it is through education that a daughter of a peasant can become a doctor and the son of a mine worker can become the head of the mine. As the Chief Quality Education and Accountability continues, we call for maximum participation of all our stakeholders and the communities at large to contribute to the solution of making our education system work. The 2017 54th National Congress of the ANC reaffirmed that, I quote, "Education remains the apex priority for the African National Congress and the ANC government," close quote. This therefore asks for us to approach the 2018 budget vote number 14 as part of the solution in bringing quality education for all. The ANC further resolved the following on basic education, open quotes, "Having achieved commendable targets pertaining to access, redress, and quality and equity, the ANC must further ensure that there is strategic alignment in repositioning of basic education sector by prioritizing policies and strategies targeting the achievement of quality teaching and learning outcomes, enhancing skills and competencies of educators, including school management team comprising the school principals, deputy principals, and subject aides, and enhancing our 2019 budget will make a difference. This is improved, taking it from the various tests that have been to achieve, and they are going to achieve on that. Again, in 19 financial year, the meeting was held the beginning of this year, 2018, to look at these targets, and the DBE and the provinces has strengthened planning and alignment with the sector by developing the PPMs, that is provincial performance measures, in response to the MTSF and reporting through outcome number 1 program action report. We urge the department that in order to respond to the medium-term strategic framework, the DBE's role is a lead in the sector, and a part of concurrent function is to guide and implement the sector priority coordinated approach. So really that coordination between DBE and the PEDs, it's what we are going to be looking at as a portfolio committee to make sure that we play our oversight role continuously when it comes to that. Our oversight visits have been a catalyst to press for action of delivery in provinces that we have visited. We thank the Minister, the Deputy Minister, and the Director General that each time we request progress report on the recommendations, the department has been able to do that comprehensively. There are instances where provinces were requested even to come to Parliament to provide their progress report, and the warm welcome and the relations are bearing a lot of good fruits. We are convinced again that this budget will make a difference. The 1.9 million allocated to curriculum policy, support and monitoring should really bring desired results. Curriculum admitted to the non-completion of their syllabus. We had principal and HOD admitting that they cannot lead that much in the monitoring of their written work. And we are saying to the department, since teaching and learning is the core, we hope this budget is going to make them to be able to make sure that when it comes to monitoring and the assisting of those teachers and the schools, that is one thing that African languages, IOL, to all schools as part of social cohesion. We are assured that IOL will be implemented incrementally as targeted, but we want to register that we call upon all provinces to take this program seriously, even call upon the province government has come up with. ANC has directed the government adequate resourcing of village and township schools through the provision of quality, efficient, innovative, and inclusive education and training programs as solution. Incentives which teachers can be attracted quality term of a very steady progress, but as a portfolio committee, we are saying much still needs to be done when it comes to this. But we are happy as the portfolio committee even to announce that for the first time in 2018 and such that, this shows indeed that as the ANC, we are committed to the fact that no learner should be left out. Everyone must enjoy the benefits of being the South African. Hence, we are even seeing the introduction of the three-stream model where the department has seen on the academic stream, but making sure that every learner is taking aboard when it comes to the issues of education. Hence, we are talking of this stream model, technical or occupational, technical, vocational. So that is the great stride that the department has shown, and will have in full support of that. Indeed, the doors of learning are opening to all in South Africa. We are worried indeed by the spate of violence in our school, calling upon all the stakeholders to make sure that we defend our schools. That is the assets that we have as a country. There is so much that has happened, but with the involvement of the school governing bodies, all the stakeholders, we believe that it's a challenge that we can tackle. As I always have, thank you very much, Minister and Deputy Minister and DG, and the whole department, to all the PEDs. We know the warm relationship that we have with you, the unions, NECT,
Honourable Member,
not forgetting
your time
our
is now
entities
expired.
that are always there. Thank you ever so much. The ANC supports this budget vote.
Thank you. Next speaker is the Honourable Ollis.
Chairperson, pit toilets are here to stay. We are going to see more sexual assaults in schools. We are going to see more violence in schools. We are going to see more drugs sold on school property. Poor teaching, underqualified teaching failure and funding failure in our schools. I wish I could say I was exaggerating with these comments, but unfortunately, deep down, we all instinctively know that I'm not. The DA has been visiting schools over the past few months, like the Mbekwana High School in Limpopo, where some pupils are parts of gangs, and one learner stabbed another one at the school gate. We also know that the department to death in the principal's office in Solomon Mhlangu High School in Modemole. In March, a 14-year-old learner from Mbangezike High School was killed. On the 23rd of February, an 18-year-old high school pupil appeared in the Limpopo court for stabbing a fellow pupil who died en route to the hospital. The DA has also visited the Isivivane Secondary School in the Eastern Cape. At that school last year, 100% of the matrics failed. On the day I visited the school, Minister, all 4 teachers were not there, including the principal. One had taken the matriculants to a job expo, one was sick, one was at a departmental meeting, and the 4th visited the Isisuzu. Learners at the Department of Justice are completely unprepared to deal with the crisis in education faced by young learners every single day in South Africa. But just when you thought you heard the worst, the ANC tabled the 28th But that's not the first sign of cutting the education budget or the 7 billion budget cut. So where's the money gone? Well, ANC, apart from your corruption, it's gone to plug the hole created at universities, primary school, because the ANC stole the budget from the schools. The salaries of teachers have increased while the budget has decreased by 8%, and that means that 80% of the education budget now goes to salaries. No money for because the teachers are holding back the struggling students, or because Umalusi just pushes the pass mark up. So you ask me, with failing teaching in the schools, what is the DA doing? Well, let me tell you. Number one, we have South African Council of Educators to establish why they are not vetting teachers properly when teachers have committed sexual and violent crimes. They have agreed to a follow-up meeting with call center, and we're calling on the other 8 ANC provinces to run out a similar call center in each province to help learners and parents in dangerous situations. We've met with the police in Eldorado calling for greater action about drugs in schools, and the Eldorado Park police tell us that there isn't one single street in Eldorado Park that is free of drugs, not one street. We have submitted our application to the Essential Services Committee to have certain positions in schools declared an essential. I hope SATU and COSATU are listening. And we have launched our Safe Schools petition. I guess none of this will happen while the ANC and their bedfellows, the EFF, cut the education budget even further.
The next speaker is the Honourable Makalipi.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Unfortunately, Minister, we are not going to support this debate. You might have to wait until you are in government to implement these reforms as EFF. You must listen. Just listen, because taking strategy. We are saying you suck up because we don't care about Africa. Let me repeat it to you. Prioritization of early child care and education and training of teachers to deliver syllabus in mother tongue. That's what we are failing to do in South Africa. South Korea, in the 1960s, had high level of illiteracy, but almost 50 years later, it tops the international education rankings in South Korea. You must listen. At the core of South Korean hated manpower to the economy. In Cuba, when Comandante Fidel Castro led the revolutionary movement in 1959, one of the first things the new socialist order prioritized was literacy. And in 1961, one of the first things the socialist order prioritized was literacy. And again, after a year-long massive national effort, more than 700 people became literate. And today, Cuban literacy is over 99%. These 4 examples of the world demonstrate 4 key principles, Minister, needed to reform basic education principles within the ANC government, as well as DA in the Western Cape, because we have ignored its concern, the education of black and poor children. Number 1, education must be community-oriented, led by government to ensure quality public education. In KZN, I've been Deputy Minister to say that Minister Mdlungwane, in the Phoenix Primary School, they were not in power, but we managed to go and intervene to read.
Why is so little then being achieved with so much? Such failure transverses the entire scope of basic education, from infrastructure right through the quality of education and teaching. The sad fact is that private schools are still children taught in schools that are made of mud. And if the infrastructure challenge was not enough of a challenge to our learners, then the quality of education delivered would strike the crippling blow. Teachers are in many instances teaching in subjects which they are not qualified. General literacy and maths literacy are at appalling levels. Science and mathematics are being neglected, and the country is failing further and further behind in competitiveness in these most important fields. With nearly 23 billion rands Being allocated to basic education for the 2018 and 2019 period, the IFP also hope that more attention will be paid to programs dealing with early childhood development, Honorable Minister, and in improving the quality of grade Rs and it is pre-grade, as well as the rolling out of ICT programs for more learners and teachers. Chairperson, basic education begins with early childhood development and as stated in the National Development Plan. Why then is the early childhood development being run by the failed Department of Social Development? But in the interest of the learners of South Africa, the IFP will support this budget vote debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I will now call upon the Honourable Deputy Minister of Basic Education.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair, Honourable Minister, Honourable Ministers and Deputy Ministers who are present out here, esteemed members of this House, principals, district directors, our beautiful learners, esteemed guests, and obviously I have to recognize in order of achievement. Listen, I would certainly want to share with you the journey that we've traversed. As one has in grade R. Today we can celebrate the fact that almost 1 million children are in preschool. Not only that, that every single child, white and black, receives delivered to him or her 4 books free of charge, on time. We can look back and say there's many of our children learn under very difficult circumstances. They come from poor socioeconomic backgrounds. But today we can celebrate the fact that 9.2 million children are being fed every day in our schools. That indeed is a wonderful achievement. We can say on time, free of charge to enhance their performance. With Southern Africa and Eastern Africa, South Africa has shown the most astounding, radical achievement and improvement. For the first time, they are our children, and we have to look at the best interests of our children. Now, one has to basically assess what is it that we have to do and what is it that we have to do better. Certainly we have a challenge, and we recognize the importance of early childhood development. And the mere fact that we have almost 1 million children means that concomitant with the access that we have provided to in doing so, until such time as we take responsibility for the safety of our schools, we are not going to succeed. But let me share with you some of what we've done, and then you make an assessment. You make an assessment. We are able to say with confidence that 60 million books are delivered to every child, black and white, on time, across the country. Now, it's very unfortunate. You talk about the Western Cape, Mr. Ollis. In terms of participation, resource province, in terms of infrastructure, has only 32%. What are you doing about the remaining children because they are colored or African, and you say you do mathematical literacy? To say, check through the Western Cape, the lowest performance in terms of mathematics is the Western Cape. And one should ask the question, why is it so that a country that doesn't have such a vast population would perform so poorly? Let us look at the phenomenon of no-fee schools.
Order.
And I want you to assess this. In a short space of time, and notwithstanding the commitment of the African National Congress to say by now we should have achieved 80%, we can celebrate the fact that 85% of our children attend no-fee schools. That's remarkable. In other words, what we are doing, we are saying that we are providing free quality education to our children. But what is the reality in the Western Cape? 57% of the schools are fee-paying schools. The remaining are no-fee schools. Go down to Limpopo, 97% of the schools are no-fee schools. Those are realities we must confront, but in the context of the poverty levels, in the context of the disproportionate development that we have acquired as a result of the apartheid past, how are our children performing? And this is the narrative. If you take the matric results last year, you would find that the quintile 1, 2, and 3, that is the poorest and poorest schools, have contributed than the quintile 4 and 5 school, which means that the issues of equity are being addressed and there is a consistent improvement in the achievement of our learners. Let us look at the pass rate for bachelors. That's important because quality passes are critical. Indeed, again, quintiles 1, 2, and 3 have result of the kind of collect the rural areas to enhance quality education. So we look at best practices. When we converse about education, it is not about competing political fiefdoms. It's about a unitary state in terms whereof we look at the best interests of each and every learner. And I think as learners, we can celebrate the fact that those learners, in terms of support to progress learners, the Western Cape. Again, the reality is those children are poor children, they are either African or colored, and you look only at those who are more affluent. So the incidence of partiality in terms of education, unfortunately, is there. When you talk about crime, Mr. Ollis, you spoke about drugs. The highest incidence of drug abuse is in the schools within the Western Cape. The highest incidence of gangsterism is within the Western Cape. The highest level of insecurity is in the Western
Honorable
Cape.
Deputy Minister,
Parents are indeed.
there's a point of order. May you please take your seat?
May I just ask the Deputy Minister not to refer to the member as you? I think it's not good to do that.
The
sir.
honorable, highly esteemed, very enlightened member would certainly agree that they have serious socio-economic problems. If you go to Mitchell's Plain, if you go to Gogoletu, we go to Khayelitsha, these are places that you do not visit. You will go as far as Limpopo. Go to the province that has these real problems. If we had not established the state-of-the-art schools in the Western Cape, compromise
Order.
our With regard to quality, we have to consistently look at early child development, improve the quality of education, ensure that we provide teacher support as best as we can. The other is redress. We have to continue providing a learning environment to our learners to ensure that they too have the advantage of learning in an institution that is conducive to better performance. The third is to look at in all subjects. Today, girl learners are producing more distinctions. Non-sexist, non-racial society is becoming a reality. So why is it today that we can indeed say that the girl learners are performing better, have contributed more distinctions, do better in terms of their bachelor's passes than boy learners? We've done this in a very short space. It also means that we have 6 learners who write matric. 78.1% of them have passed. Isn't that we want it to be? We indeed can create a better future for all our children.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister. I will now call upon Honorable C.N. Majeke.
Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, good afternoon. Education is the greatest investment for the success of the National Development Plan and the advancement of the South African socio-economic status. Basic education is the starting point. Over time, the quality and output of the South African basic education system has changed. On the positive side, preschool enrollment has improved. The proportion of people with age 20 and above with no formal schooling has fallen significantly to 4.8% in 2016 from 13% in 1995. Matric candidates receiving a bachelor pass has increased from 20.1 of Braille curriculum is highly commendable, which suggests that they have been poorly prepared in the 1 in 3 schools have a library and 1 in 5 have a science laboratory. Whilst this problem is across the board, the quality is worsening, our economy is evolving. The current school infrastructure remains an enemy of our basic education system. Schools built out of mud, wood, zinc, and asbestos should have been replaced by 2016 November. By its own, it will only meet this expired deadline 6 lines later. Stakeholders, which must include all sectors of the community. Lastly, while we support the report, as the pit latrines has turned our schools into graveyards for learners. Honorable Minister, we support the budget.
Thank you, Chairperson and Minister. Minister, last year I started the education system is increasing, unfortunately. In other words, beter te laat lyk. Die gevolg is dat leerlinge eenvoudig deur die stelsel gefaal word en nie gereed uit die skool gaan om verder te studeer op tersiêre vlak of die moderniserende ekonomie direk kan betree na skool nie. Ek moet eerlik wees, hierdie situasie herinner 'n mens baie aan die HIV-skandaal waar die regering ontken het dat hulle hoef in te gryp in die ontvouende tragedie. Die verskil is egter dat die tragedie 'n lang uitgerekte learners, but also to the current trend not to build schools and the concomitant pressures applied on existing schools. So learners are forced into a system that provides unnecessary. The press has even referred to the Overval High School incident as Lusufi's war. Mathematics and science education becomes world standard. Dan sal ons kan deelneem aan die 4de industriële revolusie wat op hande is en voor ons lê. Want diegene wat nie behoorlike wiskunde onderwys kry en wetenskaponderwys nie, sal nie kan deelneem in die moderne wêreld wat ontvou voor ons nie. Ons neem ons kinders van 'n toekoms as gevolg daarvan. Meer skole met meer moedertaalonderrig sal verseker dat almal moeilike vakke soos wiskunde en wetenskap onder die knie kan kry, veral in die basis- en beginfases van skool. Sonder dit gaan hulle vervang word as werkers wat nie behoorlike opleiding. Hierdie is nie 'n politieke toespraak nie, dit is 'n toespraak wat gaan oor die toekoms van ons kinders. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I will now call upon Honourable Member H.D. Khosa.
Chairperson, Honorable Minister of Basic Education and Deputy, MECs, honorable members, our guests, I greet you in the name of service delivery. Reparely. House Chair, I would like to open my speech by saying that the ANC support this budget vote. We're saying this, Chairperson, because a lot has been done by the ANC-led government from 1994 up to today. Free houses, free basic water, free electricity, provision of social grants to vulnerable, and amongst others, some of these achievements of current government in ensuring that dignity is restored to our people. Thus, since 1994, the ANC-led government committed itself through the task of social transformation, now declared by His Excellency President Ramaphosa in his State of the Nation address, in line with the radical economic transformation which we believe our people are yearning for. To the extent that our people be slaves from one generation to another. As Chairperson, the social challenges that I'm talking about are, amongst others, one, school infrastructure that provides no decent sanitation for learner dropout due to parents' inability of paying the fees, lack of health support programs, learners having to travel long distance without transport, and a school curriculum that is not aligned to the mainstream economy, denying the majority of learners the right to quality education. The other issues, Chairperson, is with regard to the learners without LTSM and schools without properly trained teachers. Chairperson, the ANC-led government noted that these things and put in place systems aimed at the person. Much has been done. The ANC has always and will always work with and through the people of South Africa. That is why, Chairperson, the collaboration was sought with all affected stakeholders in determining relevant programs that will address this social challenge for the quintile 1, 2, and 3 for inclusive education. Today, House Chair, children NSNP are fed. There is scholar transport. More and more learners are retained. they are able to actively participate in the learning processes. They are screened against through basic health programs. They receive free workbooks and are not paying school fees while their parents and community benefit either as suppliers of these basic services. Chairperson, the fact for our people, these basic education projects are contributing in small but profound ways, and 25 address especially the learners' well-being and how to ensure that the environment of the learners inspire them to learn and remain in school. Goal 24 ensures that the environment of every school inspires learners to want to come to school and learn. And Goal 25, culture. Chairperson, when coming to the allocation, with NSNP, the department's National School Nutrition Program will continue to contribute to the NDP's priority of eliminating poverty and supporting food security. In the term, the department plans to provide to 19,800 schools, feeding about 9.7 million learners. Scholar Transport Chairperson, we want also to appreciate the relationship between the departments of basic education and that of transport in ensuring that this program is running fairly well. No fee paying school. In 2014, the manifesto of the ANC committed that there must be a progressive realization of free education for all, and that you know, Chairperson, that it's really
Honourable
happening.
Member, your time is up.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. We are saying that as ANC, we support this government.
Zweni, who joined the parliamentary staff as the new chamber assistant. He is seated at the back there. Mr. Dumezweni, I trust that you will have wonderful days in the chamber as you provide service to the honourable members and that you will enjoy your time. The next speaker on the list is Honourable D. Carter.
Ooh, the minister's already going way. Chairperson, the budget presented earlier this year and which informs the budget vote brought home the stark and tragic consequences of a decade of a betrayal of our nation. I hope the minister gets that way in right now. Chairperson, basic education is a point in case. How the management of a department nationally and provincially was effectively captured, staffed at senior management level and held to ransom by SARTU is very well documented. It remains unconscionable that the department still battles with control over the attendance of teachers in class and that principals are still not subjected to performance management. A study by the University of Stellenbosch shockingly, class sizes have increased to 45 pupils per class on average and to as much as 48 pupils per class in the poorest of our schools. Assessments show that 78% of grade 4s cannot read for meaning and 66% of grade 5s cannot do basic math. Now, Chairperson, then the then president of a ruling party and the state went rogue and unilaterally announced the implementation of free higher education to bolster support for his preferred presidential candidate. I use the words rogue and unilateral because unless I'm advised otherwise, I do believe that the president had at the time of making this pronouncement not consulted with cabinet or budgetary allocations to higher education. And then we so, as statistics from the study mentioned earlier reveal that amongst the poorest civic engagement and national economic growth. At present, Chairperson, we are
Honourable Member, your time is up.
And our generation to further economic stagnation, poverty and joblessness. We do not support the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Like so many others, it seems that the desperately needed investment in higher education is a trade-off, in the opinion of the AC, to educate the children of the poor. Surely these cuts and inefficiencies in the education system. And we commend the department on the digitalization achievements and the improved bachelor pass trends. What does not appear to have been taken seriously, however, are practices like irregular appointments taking place at far too many schools. Honourable Minister, for the sake of quality education, can we afford not to investigate the allegations of mismanagement and irregular appointments? Now, the ACDP is appealing to you and your department to give this matter urgent attention, starting with appointments made under the ex-director of the Umlazi district. I have sent questions with regard to worrying, as this will seriously negatively impact on the quality of teaching, and the budgets are adjusted to provide for adequate training and more teachers where they are most needed. Challenges in the sector with regard to inclusive education and the needs of severely disabled children are also cause for concern. Budget cuts will seriously hamper progress in this area. The ring-fenced grant that you mentioned is, of course, a relief. In the face of budget cuts, the dire need for infrastructure, maintenance, and maintenance of equipment it has a significant impact on children and their ability to cope and succeed at the level of basic education. Now, at the time of putting this down, I wasn't aware that ECD will be transitioning to social development, so this makes an awful lot of sense. The ACDP is concerned, however, that existing ECD maintenance grant, the existing grant, is not able to deal with current realities, where unregistered, with very little help from the state, have left these centres unable to meet the norms and standards required to be registered. Not only being able to register, not being able to register means the ECD centres are up. And I will leave whether we vote for you or not to another time. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member Dudley. I will now call upon Honourable N.I. Tarabella Machesi.
Thank you, Chairperson. Up to this day, there are currently 8 million learners who are functional schools. So as I stand here, one would ask, what do learners, parents, and South Africans expect from this basic education budget vote? Firstly, their expectations will be on sanitation, a priority needed to address and to fulfill the promises made in 2014 to eradicate pit toilets after the death patient in the Eastern Cape. Chairperson, that is 24 years into our democracy. We are still grappling with what have been commissioned by the President on sanitation in schools. Sadly, we have 4,000 pit latrines in South Africa, 3,530 age-appropriate grade R toilets seats to primary schools. That is going to cost us 7.8 billion rand to ensure that all the schools have proper sanitation. It's almost the same amount that the National Treasury has astoundingly cut the school infrastructure budget by. Also, the poor performance of the ASIDI program is not helping. They are unable to meet their targets. They were unable to meet them last year. Schools that were supposed to be built, out of 59, they only achieved 16. For sanitation, 265 targeted. Another challenge is how programs are managed within the provinces. For instance, in the Eastern Cape, they failed to spend infrastructure budget. There's no doubt that that also had some bearing in the downsizing of the project, of the budget. Fake news.
Honourable Member,
I'm sorry to
your
say.
time is up.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I will now call upon Honourable L.M. Njaisa.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. Budget number 14 of the basic education was considered the annual performance plans and infrastructure at our schools. The school authorities now to demolish those toilets. So that was the lack of the sense of responsibilities on the part of this school management. The department should always try to improve quality of teaching and learning through development and through supply and active utilization of teachers. However, the issue of redeployment is always a challenge. teachers that are not very diligent and lazy to teach, at least now must quit the profession. Without adequate and quality infrastructure and without teaching and learning support material, our efforts will be a futile exercise. The Department of Education, basic education, must be hard on school authorities that are always in violation of from grade 12 is supposed to be free. So like a senior school that is charging building fees in Tabankul. So that is not a very good thing. It's not correct. A follow-up must be made into these culprits, and they must be brought to book because they are not supposed not to charge parents now to pay the schools. We wish that we have adequate funding to address the challenges of the lack of class.
Honourable Member, your time has expired.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honourable Mokoto.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson, House Chair. Apartheid and eradicating educational inequalities and setbacks. Through sweat and blood, the ANC-led government has facilitated sustained and consistent move to a transformative, inclusive, and developmental system of education, which values all children as equal citizens deserving of equal opportunities and rights for growth and self-actualization. In 2009, further reinforced by 2017 National Conference, the ANC-led government made education an apex priority for the country. Throughout this period, we have seen radical shift and a huge increase in budget allocation for education and education-related expenditure in government. Chairperson, as we move forward through this difficult journey of transformation, we do so with confidence, knowing that the ANC-led government has opened many doors of learning and access to education for our young and some with special needs. A clarion call long made by the People's Assembly when it adopted the Freedom Charter in 1955. Unlike before, more learners are now in school receiving education, which is responsive and inclusive to their needs and that of the country. The South African School Act, adopted in 1996, practically makes it compulsory for all learners to at school. And they operate education on adapted curriculum based on their identified needs, requisite support, resources. Particularly led government, when we took power, we boldly expressed that injustice, inequality, and humiliation are over. The introduction of sign language would be writing senior certificate exams for the first time. However, we want to urge the department to do more work in terms of ensuring that those learners who are blind also get admission in school, really equipping itself or positioning youth unemployment and create sustainable jobs and build the economy. We would like to highlight that intensify the footprint of this work. Some of the targets set out for 2030 by UNESCO in its Sustainable Development Goals, particularly SDG 4, obligates nations to ensure that inclusive and equitable quality education and the promotion of lifelong learning opportunities for all, and increasing youth and adults who have appropriate skills, including technical, vocational, and work for decent jobs and entrepreneurship. Our NDP, in its Vision 2030, instructs us to work together in allowing learners from different directions that provide quality, superior learning aids to them. One of the main objects of this program is for the Department of Higher Education to deliver about 30,000 graduates in artisanship by 2030. We know the critical role that DBE can play in ensuring that this materializes, particularly achieving the visions as set out in the SDG 4, provide learners with opportunities for different career pathways as choice to keep their individual interests, aptitudes, and abilities. In introducing this model, I would like to indicate that the academic pathway largely prepares learners for higher education studies at the end of grade 12 schooling. Vocational will mainly be 50% practical components and for artisanships and professions, whereas the occupational pathway will cater for 75% practical component and mainly prepares learners for world of work. In that instance, I would like to highlight that this has confirmed the view of the portfolio committee that all learners are not equal and they are not equally gifted cognitively. In that case, learners will be treated according to their needs and according to their capabilities. The fourth industrial revolution has provided a disruptive digital technology that will change the way we live, work, and interact with the global markets. Technologies such as automation, artificial intelligence, robotics, nanotechnology, 3D printing.
Thank you. Next speaker is the Honorable Kubisa.
House Chairperson, thank you very much. Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister, and other ministers and Deputy Ministers, honorable members, thank you very much. This department is entrusted with the responsibility of laying the foundation of the best quality education that will afford our learners' minds to be fit for ensuing years in tertiary education and the world of work, or as fully fledged citizens. Nelson Mandela once said, and I quote, "Our children are the rock on which our future will be built, our greatest asset as a nation. They will be our leaders, leaders of our country, the creators of our national wealth, those who care for and protect our people," unquote. Among its priorities, this department has set for its 2014-2019 MTSF are to improve the quality of teaching and learning through development and supply and effective utilization of teachers, improve the quality and learning through the provision of adequate quality infrastructure and learning and support material, expanded access to early childhood care, and improvement of quality of grade R with support of pre-grade R. The Minister and Deputy Minister must be commended for the good results in 2017, but as National Freedom Party want to say, we need more bachelor's passes. As the NFP, we want to make a few recommendations. One, the department must improve on school security. The department must improve on learner transport. School infrastructure in many schools is still very bad. There are still schools with no laboratories, libraries, toilets, and no classrooms. The use of mud classrooms, especially in rural areas, and children who sit under the trees. Incidents of children that have fallen and died in pit toilets are worrying, as it recently happened in the Gauteng province and other provinces too. Drug abuse in schools, the use of weapons and learners killing one another and teachers harassed, beaten or killed in schools are causes for concern. The poor standard of our learners' literacy, reading and mathematics nationally compared to their regional or international counterparts is a cause for concern. Some teachers graduate and do not get employed for a very long time. Grade R teachers are poorly paid. There is generally a shortage of maths and science teachers in rural areas. In certain regional offices, acts of corruption are reported. In some provinces, norms and standards are not attended to properly. The development and distribution of digital content to schools annually to promote e-learning in schools is praiseworthy. But as the National Freedom Party want to emphasize the fact that there is indeed a dire need, to ensure that our schools in urban areas are also exposed to technological education. The department is commended for setting up the target of 13,500 young people to a Funza Lushaka bursary annually for them to enroll in initial teacher education 2018 financial year to 22.7 billion in the 2019 financial year. The reduction amounting to 3.6 billion to education infrastructure is really worrying and is a cause for concern. The taking away of the 50.5 million from the Science and Technology Conditional Grant is very worrying when it is well known that we don't have maths and science teachers in rural areas. Having raised this concern, Chairperson, we believe that the department still has to do better.
Honourable Member, your time has expired.
We've been captured by the ongoing spate of violence and abuse within our schooling environment. The National School Safety Framework, which should be amended by all schools, has to date not been workshopped by all, and close on 10,000 of the 25,000 public schools still have to be trained on this framework. This is indicative of the lack of will by provinces, as they will only finalise this process in the 2018-19 financial year. To name but a few, there are reasons for the failure of schools and provinces in exercising their responsibilities. Gross underreporting of incidents due to poor and ineffective management systems, the lack of will to investigate these cases, and the possible bribing of parents by the perpetrators. Learners find it difficult to speak out for fear of retaliation and the stigma that may be attached to it, the fear of not being believed or being blamed for this abuse. The power relation often intimidates learners into silence, where the educator is the abuser, the lack of counselling and assistance, and the inability of most learners to talk about sexual matters with adults due to cultural or other reasons. The South African Council of Educators, a statutory body within the Department of Basic Education, dealing with the vetting and verification of educators, as well as the investigation of cases referred to them, have on numerous occasions indicated to us that they cannot execute their mandate because they don't have the capacity to do so. What is of concern in this department is that their ethics department only has the services of 3 prosecutors that the perpetrators face the might of the law. If they meet these conditions, those found guilty should be placed on the Child Protector Register and or the Sexual Offenders Registers, and their SAY certificates must be withdrawn. Our learners are on a trial of survival in unsafe schooling environments and invariably drop out due to the lack of support, and, Minister, they become a statistical figure. The department must therefore admit that they have not adequately addressed their fear in addressing the relevant needs, where reporting on false crime and abuse can be made with immediate assistance. It would bode well if provinces followed suit. Thank you.
The next speaker is the Honourable Boertes.
Honourable House Chairperson, the leadership of basic education led by the Minister, Honourable Chief Whip of the African National Congress, ladies and gentlemen, his conduct was regarded as an antithesis to what was then white normative and expected conduct. The elite supremacy and black inferiority. Honourable House Chairperson, education is an incubator center for the production of a future of less joblessness and to render poverty poorer. Unlike in the past where it was used, it is a fact, Honourable House Chairperson, that in South Africa we spend on average 3 times more on education than a country like Kenya. It is a fact that we perform better than Qatar, than Indonesia, than Peru, than Morocco, and that is in terms of the World Economic Forum Global Information Technology Report produced in 2015. In fact, Honourable House Chairperson, our education spend is 2% on average more than any other European country. Like Rosa Luxemburg have said, we must always proclaim loudly what is happening. To tackle the pitfalls of education requires two common approaches: approach of increasing access and learning. The important issue, House Chairperson, is that before we took government in 1994, the total education expenditure stood at 31 billion rand. Now, can we remind our people that the contribution today is 57 billion rand towards just the component of free higher education? The democratic government today of our people spends 320 billion rand on education. So, Honorable House Chairperson, there is no interstate conflict. What we contribute to basic education and what finds expression in higher education is as a common goal to render poverty poorer. And that is important to encourage, to develop content knowledge so that our teachers can apply better pedagogical practices. The fact, Honorable House Chairperson, that 14,000 Funza Losaka bursaries were contributed with state money, so that last year, 2,600 new graduates managed to enter the education field, say something about the pro-poor agenda of the African National Congress government and his minister in government. Honorable House Chairperson, let us speak truth to power so that our people are not confused. In 2009, when Minister was this department, the matric pass rate stood at 60.6%. Today, it stands at 75.1%. Now that is forward movement and there is no backward step. Let's address this question. Let's address this question of the one to caution the Western Cape government. You cannot enroll a 32% of your entire learners for full mathematics, and then you claim easy victories, House Chairperson. Where the ANC says that is rural and more poorer, such as KZN, we have an enrollment rate of 55.1%, and is in the Eastern Cape, 53.2%. So to claim easy victories, House Chairperson, we are remanding the Democratic Alliance and do so. It means 23 new state-of-the-art brick and mortar schools has been built last year, since the time that the minister stood in Parliament. The fact of the matter is, the descendants of the apartheid engineers that constructed mud schools are present in this House, Honorable House Chairperson. But as Nelson Mandela has done, we are saying forward ever, backwards never. We forget the bad things that has been done by some amongst us wearing blue beautiful suits and dresses. Honorable House Chairperson, let's address the questions to the Minister of Basic Education. We think there is a problem of the balance sheet in basic education. The fact of the matter is, the poor and the working class should be the primary recipient of our government's agenda. We must therefore, Minister, rather err on the side of the poor than be overcautious on the unfounded fears and anxiety of those. That in South Africa today, we have more than 12 million learners trained by over 118,000 educators in 25 schools. That is significant for any government, worse a government that has been only 24 years in power. Simultaneously, House Chairperson, what is important is that our no-fee school produce enormous amount of qualitative outcomes. In areas where we have a no-fee schools, we have been able to see, Honorable House Chairperson, that 76,300 of learners in poor schools that are being subsidized by our government has obtained a bachelor passes. That opposed to the 67,000 learners in free schools. And I think the balance sheet that we have been speaking about under the leadership of the minister question today, is this generation better educated than their parents? Our statistics South Africa confirms that the majority of young people aged 20 to 34 in South Africa have an increased higher level of education than their parents. More than 65 years later, Honorable House Chairperson, after the promulgation of the ban to education, higher education attainment better than those of their forebears. The question, Honorable House Chairperson, that we must address is the question of what we call the under-education gap, where some of our families remains unskilled from one generation to the next. Therefore, it must be an instruction note to our minister that there must be an input cost in terms of our human capital conversion. More money must be dedicated to teacher development, and we are very...
The next speaker is the Honourable Minister of Basic Education.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let me take this opportunity to thank all members for a debate. I think it was a very constructive debate. We have noted positive and constructive counsel that have come from different members of the committee, especially from parties that are clearly knowledgeable on matters of education and education transformation in our country, about challenges facing our country, and undoubtedly driven by patriotism and not sheer populism informed by political opportunism from others, so they know themselves. So, Chair, I'm never going to play the Western Cape against the country as a minister, because even kids in Western Cape belong to us as South Africans. They are kids, and we wish them well, and we celebrate when they succeed. It's quite clear that in the policy, and I think South Africans have to note, if you don't vote DA in majority, they will hate you, collect stories, and wish well for you, and even collect sordid stories of murder, who killed where, who was killed, just to really paint you negatively. But kids in the Western Cape should know that as the ANC, but also as their minister, we care about them and celebrate everything going well when it's going well for them. They're not in an enemy province, unlike others that I'm sure are declared, because when Ms. Machet says so it means only the children are Western Cape, the rest are enemies. So I'm also, Chair, I'm not, as I say, very willing to really get into debates about political parties that clearly have no vision about education, have no policies on education, bring gossips and street talks about who killed where, who died where, and then there's no educational matters that they can put to the table for us to use as a sector, and we're always very willing to learn from members. So these pedestrian debates of talking with people just who seem to have woken up today, they've just discovered mud schools, don't know how they came about, I can assure them that the ruling party on an ongoing basis is eradicating the mud schools it inherited. So it didn't bring mud schools, so it can't be held responsible. So as I say, I'm not keen to also engage on pedestrian debates, but also can say, Member Mkali, when you compare private schools and public schools in South Africa, you want to compare elephants to mice. Public schools constitute 96% of schooling in this country. So which means South Africans still have huge confidence in the... So if you say a school closed in Rwanda and what, it belongs there. Here, South Africans have huge confidence in the public sector.
Will you just take your seat, please? Yes, Honourable Member, why are you rising?
No, on a point of clarity, Chair. We just wanted to check which comparison the minister is talking about, because the Honorable Mkhalipi never made a comparison
No.
between private schools and public schools. Please,
No.
can we get clarity
Okay.
there, please?
Continue, Honorable Minister.
Thanks, Chair.
Come again. So, Chair, I really want to share with this House that 96% of South Africans still have confidence in the public sector, and only 4% constitute the private sector. The public sector provides for more than 13 million learners in this country, compared to less than 300,000 in private schools in this country. So there's no comparison. And I really want to say to Member Ollis, I wish you well. I think go to school, my comrade. You need it. At this rate, you really need. I wish you well. And you will come a better, I think, best politicians with the energy. So good luck, go to school. And as I said, Chair, because that's the last thing I forgot, I was unable to mention again that through our program to promote unity and the pride as a social transformation and cohesion, which includes school sports and school choral and indigenous school events, we are also working very hard to make sure that we close this question of too many sports codes in the education sector. And as I said earlier, that we will be signing a memorandum with the Department of Sports and Culture. I also, as I close, want to invite our partners and academics to join us on the 31st of May. We have received a very exciting history report, which I think all South Africans should participate in what I think is going to be a festival of ideas, so that all of us as South Africans outside the media glare, we can engage as to what history we want, what national identity we want, national unity, patriotism, and I think we want to open it up to get every other South African to contribute towards this rewriting of history, and I think it's going to be a very exciting exercise. So as I close, Chair, I really want to thank our partners in civil society, the non-governmental organization, in the private sector in particular, the foundations that have been helping us, but also our academics in the country have been extremely helpful in also guiding and supporting the work that we do. So thank you very much, and thank the members also for the debate.
Thank you, Honourable. That concludes the debate. Honourable members are reminded that the debate on justice and constitutional development vote will take place at 4:15 in this venue, and the debate on social development will take place at the same time in the old Assembly chamber. That concludes the debate and the business of this mini plenary session. The mini plenary will now rise.